Author's note: we introduce you to our collection of interviews with elite goalies with one of the more recognizable goalies over the past decade, Marty Turco. Although he is no longer playing, his career was a historic one. He's an icon in the Dallas Stars organization and he played the position in a very unique, bold, and confident way. He revolutionized the way goalies pass and handle the puck with the Turco grip, and he continues to influence the way smaller goalies play the position. He also happens to be one of the strongest mental warriors the goaltending position has ever seen, so his insights on how to manage the three pillars of elite goaltending is remarkably valuable in reinforcing the purpose of this book. Goldman: Mike was really excited to have you as the first player interview in our book. He wanted you to set the stage for enlightening goalies on the path you took to become a mental warrior. I know you guys worked together when you were with the Stars and that you are still close friends today, so to start, how would you explain the way you guys shared the same ideas on having the mental fortitude needed to become elite? Turco: Valley and I are definitely on the same page when it comes to philosophy, so I think it goes without saying that everything we do in life as goalies is mental. You can call it mind games or you can call it a belief system or superstitions or just a way of life, but no matter what phrase or cliché you want to use, it's all a roundabout way of seeking the truth. To do something and to do it well and have the desire to do your best is one thing, but the truth is that nobody can be at their best until they're fully committed. And that's not only physically speaking, but especially mentally speaking. If you're not committed 100% into it, you can never totally be at your best and you can never become an elite goalie. Goldman: why do you think it is so difficult for goalies to become elite mental warriors? Turco: well, the unfortunate thing about goaltending is that it's an 82-game season, but the way coaches handle practices between playing all these games is a little asinine and a backwards mentality. The amount of pressure that they put on goalies combined with the value that goalies have to a team's success means that a goalie knows they have to play well all the time. Never mind the importance of a goalie just feeling good and confident about themselves, but winning is everything. Regardless of how a goalie plays one night, sometimes just 12 hours later on the morning after a game, the whole design of the practice is maybe 10% geared towards actually supporting the goaltender. I get the pressure the coaches are under to win, but you would think in today's day and age, practices would be more catered towards goaltenders so that they can get what they really need in order to prepare the right way. Being in this situation will inevitably take a toll after a while, and that's one of the main unfortunate things that pro goalies face as a pitfall of becoming elite, and something that is part of being involved in the ultimate team sport. Goldman: so what was one of the most vital lessons you learned about being an elite goalie over the course of your NHL career? Turco: goaltenders live on an island. We have our own set of rules, our own equipment, we get treated differently, and we speak a different language. There's really nothing like it in sports, playing this type of position and this special game on skates. But with that came the realization that a majority of my constituents and colleagues didn't even understand my position. That even includes some coaches, and I'm like, how is that even possible? You've been around goaltenders your whole life and you can't play the game without them, so how could you not understand them? Of course there are some coaches that do understand the need for them and understand the difference between the good ones and the bad ones, but even they don't really take the time to get to know or appreciate the intricate details that go into the mental capacity needed to play the position at an elite level. That's where you get the general saying, "Hey, I just want my goalies to stop the puck." And to me, goalies are always like, yeah, I'm trying to, but we never tell players to just go score goals or to just go sit on the bench because you've skated long enough for now. So because we really appreciate the mental side of it, we don't dig on our teammates even though they look at us through one odd eyeball. It's a really unique relationship that goaltenders have within a super secretive locker room that fans don't really get to see. Even within our world, we still feel like we're at odds with everyone else, or that we're just different. Not that we're alone out there, but it's already hard enough to be normal, which is why being an elite goalie can be so difficult in terms of the mental and emotional side of being an athlete. Goldman: is this why there are so many goalies that fail and so few that actually succeed? Turco, I think so. When you get to this elite level where you are on the cusp of becoming a full-time NHL goalie, just getting a chance to turn pro is such a rare feat. Even though you see goalies play differently with different skill sets and at different sizes, it's hard to predict what kind of success they will have, or who is going to be great or not, without knowing them personally or knowing a lot about their personality or their mental capacity. The guys that have been the greatest, it goes without saying that they have some of the most complex bandwidths between the ears. You want to see exactly what's in there, and even then there's guys that maybe didn't have comparable talent in relation to their peers, but had a longer and more prosperous NHL career because of their ability to handle their emotions. I've seen plenty of goalies that I've played with where I wondered how good they could have been if they had their wits about them. Goldman, every goalie we talk to in this book is at a different stage in their playing career. But for someone like yourself that has been through a career from start to finish, what would you say to help a younger goalie gain some of the knowledge needed to handle these different obstacles without them actually going through them? Turco, I think for aspiring or young goalies, whether they are at the college, junior or pro level, since we know that there's nothing more valuable than pure experience, you should always have an open mind concept. The open mind concept falls under the general category of big picture learned experience. The big picture can sometimes be looked at every year, every summer, every month, or maybe even every day. Regardless of the scale, they just need to have a real broad sense of what has happened and chalk it up as a learning experience. When you do this, you can get over it and appreciate it and hopefully not let it happen again. You have to understand how you handled that situation mentally and how you handled it physically, like if you thought you could do something different so it doesn't happen again. But ultimately, just be sure to always appreciate the ebbs and flows, the negative and positive impacts of things that happen to you as a goalie, and then appreciate it by knowing it's an opportunity to learn what you'd like to do better. For that matter, also appreciate the good things that you do and the things you're proud of doing, because that's something you have inside of you. If you can handle a certain situation or realize there's something you want to handle differently, well, just know that you can. Then it really becomes easy to look back, have a positive mindset with how you processed the experience, and then forge ahead with a solid game plan. Goldman, was that understanding something you learned later in your career, or was it something that was always a part of who you were before you turned pro? Turco, it was actually one of the things that was easier for me to achieve in my career. What was the hardest for me was the day-to-day, inside-the-game type of mentality. Especially when I was younger, this happened during the pre-goalie coach era, so I was my own goalie coach at the time, and even though I wasn't aware of these vital lessons, I always had fun with that process. I was always known as a little bit of a different goaltender. I was quick, I read and reacted to plays better than most, but technically speaking, I didn't fit a mold because I never stopped the puck the exact same way twice. But I was different, and I embraced that because I knew that some of the greatest goalies ever were considered different, like the sheer unpredictability of someone like Dominik Hasek. Goldman, so what made you mentally tough, or at least aware that you had some mental toughness, in your pre-college days? Turco, I think no matter what arena I was in through different stages of my life, I didn't find it difficult to be a good winner or difficult to handle things when I wasn't playing well. I was able to keep an even keel about it, appreciate it, and move on. When things didn't go well, I just learned to try and change things up. When you do this for a living, you can look at your body and you can tweak things, whether it's how you're training, what you're doing in the gym, or what you're not doing in other areas, and obviously nowadays we even have equipment guys to help us tweak things with our gear. Those fall in the category of mind games, but if you believe in what you're doing, and your knowledge of something is growing, and you're paying attention to what your job is and how you can do it better, that's just going to add confidence, no matter what is going on. So I found out pretty early in my career that switching things up was always a pretty good method. Goldman, how were you able to achieve that even-keeled approach? It's such an important element to a goalie's development, but for an elite goalie like yourself that was so in tune with your emotions, how did you manage them through all of the ups and downs? Turco, getting scored on in games and giving up goals in practice and having guys or fans chirp or parents speak their mind, well, we're all human. It might look like goalies don't give a crap or we're not paying attention, but they have to turn around and play well and not let it bother them. That can be innate, but that can also be achieved by simply finding ways to alleviate pressure on yourself. I think the majority of that ability to alleviate pressure comes from what you think about beforehand, and what type of preparation you put into a game or situation beforehand. I really believe that often gets overlooked. I would never envision myself getting scored on, but I was aware and knew that even in my best season, I was still letting in 2 goals a game. I've let in thousands of goals in my career, but knowing that the game is built on mistakes, it's your preparation process that is used to help eliminate those mistakes. And not just your mistakes, but your teammates' mistakes as well. Knowing that you're ready to do whatever it takes going into a game and that you're prepared for all scenarios, whether it's getting scored on in the first minute or having a shutout ruined in the last minute, that is always the key. Goldman, was there ever a time where you struggled with this aspect of your game? Turco, I had a hard time with that in college because I was on a good team, was not seeing much action, and would be letting in goals that I should have had. Nobody really noticed because we were winning these games, but I really had to teach myself to get over that mental hurdle. When I was younger, it was really tough mentally to stay in the game and not let my mind wander for long periods of time. But I started to develop the skill on my own by breaking the game down into smaller 5-minute stages like Tony Esposito would do, or I would try to continually watch the play in the other end. I would skate to the boards between whistles and only went one way every time, and I would rarely screw that up. The reason for doing these things was because when it was time not to think, I was in the now. But when it came time to think about what was going on, I was being forced to not think, so my goal was to put everything I had into making sure I was in the right position and just reacting. Based on my experiences, I wasn't thinking about anything else, I was just letting plays come to me, and therefore I wasn't agitated or preoccupied or linear with my focus. I was very open and receptive to all the little signs, and all the while, being able to react to the puck. That was only attainable because of the mental preparation and the work that went into it. Goldman, how exactly did you learn to correctly prepare your mind in order to attain the level of clear focus you needed to be at your best? Turco, earlier in my career, things went so well for me that I really thought I was pretty invincible, and I almost felt like nothing could happen to me. I wasn't stopping every puck, but knowing what I wanted to accomplish, having those goals and meeting those goals routinely because of the focus and dedication I had, I knew I was doing the right things. It got to the point where I never thought I could screw up. But when I was getting paid to win, there were times when I did lose sight of my job. In my mind, living up to the contract became more important than stopping the puck. Being the best I could be got to the point that it was transcending the things I needed to do to play the positi on the way I needed to play it. But I also appreciated that sometimes I was more concerned about my teammates and what they were doing, or what was going on off the ice. Having to put that away and almost not care about those things was hard, and it hurt me, because that was my human nature and that's just who I was. I am a caring person, and that aspect of it was affecting my game. Even after a while, and even when I was working with a mental skills coach and a sports psychologist, because of my caring attitude, everything I would think of during a game wouldn't allow me to turn off my brain and just read and react and play my best. I was so concerned with off-ice stuff, or getting scored on, or what I'd say to reporters and others, or what excuses I could make up to feel better, that in my brain, I was just thinking about way too many things. What I had to learn to do, and it took me years to learn it, was to appreciate the thoughts that I had when I was playing. Anything under the sun that you could imagine, it was going through my head. But what I eventually realized was that a majority of my thoughts were well-deserved, well-intentioned, and were ultimately caring thoughts. At that point, my preparation finally improved because I just learned to appreciate them. I'd allow myself to finish the thought that I was having, and then I would forget it. I'd appreciate that each individual thought had value in my life, but I'd quickly realize it wasn't helping me accomplish my goal of playing in the now. So that whole process helped me get back to what I should have been doing within games. Goldman, once you figured out that aspect of your mental preparation, was there ever a time where you struggled with your identity as a goalie? Turco, no, because you could never say that Marty Turco was this type of goalie. I might be this type today, but I might change things to become this other type of goalie in the future. We all evolve, our brains evolve, our nerve endings change, and our impulses change. We have an innate ability, both physically and mentally, to train our bodies and minds and ultimately change who we are. So we're always a work in progress, and that's why I think my success as an elite goalie always reverted back to preparation. You have to be understanding of what pitfalls may be ahead, what it takes to win, and how to eliminate the external distractions. For example, every day in practice, something might bother you. But the biggest disturbance to being able to mentally prepare and clear your mind is carrying that something around, not talking about it, not handling it. That will really cloud your reaction time because these things are lingering in your brain. That's what every goalie is trying to do, just going out and playing. But the older you get, the harder it is to accomplish, because so many things are going on in your life. Goldman, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about how you appreciate the thoughts that go through your mind, whether they are positive or negative. I wrote a chapter in this book about the importance of realizing that you will be wrong and make mistakes. We all strive for perfection, but rarely is it attainable for very long. What are your thoughts on how the influence of being right or wrong affected your mental game? Turco, I think one of the best things I did when I was younger was that I never tried to emulate one goaltender. I would take the best parts of the guys that I liked and the best of what they did that I thought I could do. As I got closer to the NHL, I realized that I always knew I would need to make changes, I always knew I had more to give, and I always knew that I could be better, even after my best seasons or after the years where I went deep in the playoffs. So even if you think you've played the best game ever, well, part of the goal for an elite goalie is to do that every night. So the ultimate goal comes down to preparation and understanding that you need to be in a calm state of mind away from the rink, which helps you narrow your focus into, all right, how can I be at my best tonight? I certainly knew that mistakes would be made and bad times were ahead, but I made it my goal to eliminate as many of them as possible. And trust me, I've given up plenty of bad goals and made many mistakes. I gave up plenty of goals where I was 60 feet out of the net and plenty of goals from some of the worst players imaginable, and it's a bad, lonely feeling. But what makes or breaks guys at the highest levels is when they can't get over it. For me, it was an adjustment to get over bad goals or to play great after allowing a bad goal. That's why I didn't take time off in practices. When I was practicing, I had to perform like it was a game. To me, it just all comes back to preparation. Even the best in the world have had some horrible experiences that the general public would likely never get over, never come out from beneath that rock for a long time. But knowing that you can accept the mistake or that you were guessing or doing something wrong, well, then you know you can stop it the next time. Then it's just making sure that you do, and then it becomes a matter of executing. Anything can happen, but you're only at your best when you're living in the exact moment that you're in. It's just you and the game. No matter what it is that is bothering you, it's totally irrelevant to what you're doing in the now. It doesn't matter if you made the best save of your life against the best player in the world 5 minutes ago, because it is completely meaningless and has nothing to do with the NOW. Over my career, I developed different types of scenarios like this with word choices like, now, and other phrases I'd say as guys were coming down the ice, just to narrow my focus on playing in the moment. Goldman, we've learned through lessons in this book that getting in the zone is usually attained by playing in the moment. How do you explain what it's like to get in the zone during games? Turco, it's hard to summon it, but you can be in the zone without knowing it. You always want to get there and you can always work on different stimuli that can help you get there. But if you're always believing in what you're doing, even after a mistake, knowing that the belief you have is that you care and you can get better, and then you do something about it, then you are going to find a way to get back into the zone. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Goldman, what if a goalie has the right intentions, is preparing with a clear mind, but is still not getting the results? What advice do you have for goalies then? Turco, even though you're in a rut, you can still work at it. If you're doing the right things and coming up with a good game plan and having good practice habits, you're going to get out of it sooner than you think. Sometimes in the games that I felt the best, or felt like I played really well, I'd watch my saves afterwards and realize I wasn't as good as I thought I was, or got really lucky on a few. The point to that is this: the highs aren't as high as you think, and the lows aren't as low as you think. Even in your darkest moments, you need to get back out there and work on solidifying strong work habits that will last you a lifetime. You can develop the work ethic and good habits, but you still need to reinforce them on a consistent basis. That sounds very physical or technical, but at the end of the day, it all falls under your mental capacity. That was one of the things I was most proud of in my career. It was my ability to look ahead, plan it, and always play in the now. As I'm speaking to you, I'm going through a lot of situations where this lesson was learned. And most of these memories stem from practice. That's where you have to learn to be good and push yourself to be the best and fight for every puck. Goldman, I wanted to ask you about a topic that we discussed in another chapter. For being an elite goalie with an all-star profile, how important was it for you to stay humble with your approach and identity? I think pride gets in the way of a lot of young goalies and they develop an inflated ego, especially with today's obsession with social media. Can you talk about that experience in your career? Turco, I'll start by saying that goaltenders are supposed to be confident. You often hear the line that goalies should walk the fine line between being confident and cocky, but without going overboard. Appreciate moments where you let yourself go and show some swagger, but don't let your ego become inflated. It can become a highly detrimental influence. It looks terrible when it's your job to win but you let your ego get in the way. Having confidence while staying humble is super important, and there's a lot of documented reasons why goalies have been unable to do this and have had that problem. But to let your ego get in the way and to be arrogant, well, that's pretty much like saying you're as good as you'll ever be. When you're confident, you play at your best, but you know and understand that you can still improve. You also understand that when you're humble, it's hard work to stay at that high level. Part of the reason I got paid what I did was because I stayed healthy, but also because I gave a huge crap about my teammates. In order to be humble, you have to allow yourself to bring others into your life and think about others and not let yourself get in your own way. It's a tough enough position to mentally handle, let alone thinking you're the king and expecting to be treated like a king. That's not really how it works. I have been called arrogant and cocky at times and maybe I deserved it, but maybe those people didn't really know me. I had to play confidently and that's what I needed to do to be at my best, and I believed in what I was doing, especially playing the puck the way I did. If you don't believe in what you're doing, you need to change it. But if you think you're the best, you're never going to change for the better. People and other goalies will start to pass you by, and even worse, nobody will want to be around you. Goldman, if a goalie is feeling confident but wants to stay humble, I believe body language becomes important. How would you explain the importance of body language? Turco, the coolest yet strangest viewpoint in sports is when a goaltender gets scored on. Whether it's in peewees or at the pros, everyone looks at you. How you handle yourself immediately after that and the mannerisms you display are so powerful in terms of the confidence of your team, how the momentum shifts will go, how you're going to play, and what the other team thinks in regards to scoring again. It's an unenviable position to be in, one that carries so much power and persuasion that it is almost unfair. I promise you, when you have a guy that routinely handles it poorly, with his arms in the air, looking around at his teammates, or blaming others for what happened and getting agitated, it will be bad. The mannerisms become so important because it's almost unteachable, and that again comes back to preparation and thinking about how you will react when you get scored on before you go play. That is the best thing for you in terms of your subconscious mentality because you can't tell your body how to move or twitch unless it's already happening. Positive body language has to happen naturally, but if you can appreciate it and remain humble and have confidence that you won't make the mistake again with a positive attitude and outlook, then I think that's where you can really shine and really relish the position. That's what body language can do, it can transcend and transform a whole team. If you want to grow and move on and be at your ultimate best, you have to take care of your body language. It can be agitating at times when you're giving up weak goals, but the ones that handle those situations the best are the ones that end up being the best. Goldman, what was the most difficult stage of your career? Was there a time where you may have felt completely helpless or desolate, like there was no way out? How did you handle that and how did you ultimately get over that obstacle? Turco, there's two things that I would say. One was during my sophomore year in college. We lost in triple OT and played well, but didn't win. I started my sophomore year and maybe I was cocky or maybe didn't appreciate the opportunity and I don't think I worked very hard that summer. We had a great team but I was letting in goals that got lost in the shuffle. We went to my hometown to play a team in college and they were good. I didn't play great and lost a couple of big games. My coach had a heart-to-heart with me afterwards and kind of pointed his finger and asked for me to be better and was questioning things I was doing on and off the ice, and more importantly, what I wasn't doing. He was a great coach, but I had a hard time with that and I didn't handle it particularly well. So what I had to do was talk about it with other people, and then remind myself that I was going to be able to work through it. Nothing replaces work. Even though you may not feel better the next day or the next week, if you work hard to do the right things, then eventually you'll get it straightened out. The second one was a hard time in the middle of my NHL career after we lost to the Avalanche in the first round of the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. I was one of the bigger guys on the Stars and was talking to reporters on a daily basis. It got to the point where I was answering made-up questions in my head and coming up with excuses for something I had done during the freaking game. It went on for a long time and it really hindered my play, and I don't think I understood why at the time. I didn't have a regular goalie coach and I was kind of on my own. That was a tough time for me and I got caught in a rut. But once again, I just had to talk to someone and stop making excuses for myself. I realized that instead of waiting for someone else to do something for me, I was just going to worry about myself. I had a hard time being selfish and I was worried about my teammates and what others thought, so I had to learn to be selfish, which was a tough one. Goldman, everyone we spoke to in this book has mentioned how important it was to have support along the way to becoming an elite goalie. Can you talk a little bit about the support you've had in your career? Turco, I don't know if I believe in karma, but I've probably been the most fortunate guy to have the support I've had. I've known my wife since high school and we went through the whole thing together, from being poor college kids to making 50 grand in the minors and having a great time. So I'll say this, my coaches, my teammates, I always loved them. But after our second time losing against the Avalanche in the first round, as a goalie, you take a lot of heat losing a series in 5 games. After the season ended in Game 5, my general manager was Doug Armstrong and he was sitting there. He was upset and I was bummed out. He waited around and came up to me specifically and looked at me and said, "Hey Marty, I believe in you. I believe in you as a goaltender, and you just keep working at it and we'll get these other guys on board." When he saw me at my lowest as a professional and knowing that he paid me to win, for him to come over and say that was huge and something that I'll never forget. Goldman, in closing, how did that affect you going forward? Was there anything that resonated with you today besides the actual memory? Turco, it just reminded me that even though things on the outside looked a certain way, I still had the belief that I was doing things the right way and was training the right way. So I think instead of changing just for the sake of changing things after a tough series, I just kept going down the same path. He reminded me that I was on the right path and that I was doing the right things, and that made me believe in myself.